So the first question is really just give me a little snapshot of kind of what it was like for you before we started working together and what made you decide to kind of take the leap and decide to go for this program.
Um, well, I was kind of I guess adrift a little bit, if you want to call it that. I was writing, but I didn't I had a sort of a deadline in my mind, and of course my publisher wants me to finish by a certain time, but I didn't have anyone sort of to work with to kind of push me and keep me on pace to get things done. And I also didn't have a reader. I mean, I always had my family, but I didn't have one with sort of that critical eye to read and give me feedback on things that I could improve, do better if I was getting off track. To sort of keep me right dead center on what I needed to have done. I remember my husband reading the first chapter I handed him, and he goes, "Oh, that's great." And I was like, "More, and he said, "Well, I don't know, it sounded great." And I immediately thought to myself, "Okay, I need a professional here. I'm an OCD type A, get it done kind of person here. I'm the one they call when they need results, and I need a professional here. I need a person who's going to give me feedback, who's going to keep me on track, who's going to make sure I'm writing every week, who's going to make sure I'm meeting deadlines, that I'm producing." And so that's when I started looking around and looking at people and trying to find, reading reviews, reading, and just trying to find the best person I could find. And of course, that's when I found you, and you had good reviews, and you had great results, and your company was good. And I went to a couple of webinars, and I thought, this is the lady I want to help me to make sure that I get going and that my book has the best results.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Great. So now after working together, what is sort of the transformation that's happened so far from us working together?
Well, so far it's been I'm producing on a steady pace, which is great. Before it was kind of hit miss. I would work really well one week, but maybe one week I would call those think weeks, where where I would set aside time to write, but no actual writing would come out. I would just kind of, it would be, I'd think of a lot of ideas, but I didn't really produce anything. So I always have time set aside to write, but I wouldn't really, I didn't always accomplish something. And so now, with our kind of, we're in I think a good routine where, I produce a couple of chapters. You give me responses on the chapters. I produce a couple of more chapters. I make the edits to the chapters. I look at your suggestions. It sparks something else. I'm going on to the next chapters. We talk about what I need to add in, what I take out. Where, I'm in a really good, we're in a good creative flow, and that is helping me a great deal. And like I said before, just having a professional to collaborate with has just been awesome. Just not having someone that says, "Oh, that's great." I need a little more than that. So, having that, and having that good relationship of collaboration has been just so super for me, and my creative juices are flowing. So that's the best part.
Yay, I love
Yeah.
hearing that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Mhm.
So now, if you were talking to someone else who's sort of sitting on the fence, who's kind of in a similar boat to where you were before, what would you tell them about taking the leap?
Oh, well, I would say, I think probably. I think there's a book in everybody. I think, probably everybody has a story or some stories they could tell. And I think probably everybody thinks, well, I can just sit down at the computer and write a book. And maybe they can, but I also think that a very important part of that process of writing a book is this piece of having a sounding board,
Yeah.
of being able to say, what do you think about including this part or this part? What do you think about should this go here or there? What do you think about inserting a chapter here or taking this chapter out here? Um, uh, Even making the outline, the first thing you and I talked about was my outline I had created for the book. And, you gave me a huge, response on the outline of things that you liked and that you thought I should, include this, not include that. Someone to help you with that outline. I think, yeah, everybody can write a book, but I think that writing really is better when you have someone you can discuss with, when you have that sounding board to talk to and write with. So I would tell anyone who's going to write, get someone professional to talk to about it, because it will so improve your writing and it will so make the process easier. And you hear people say, oh, I wrote a book but it took me 8 years.
Mm.
you know and okay, that's great, but what if you could do it in 8 months? If you
Yeah.
had somebody, there to help you with those questions and those things you need to think about, and answer those what ifs. What if I do this? What if I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? And you could just do it so much faster, to have that collaborative partner. And you're a great collaborative partner. So I would tell anyone that wants to write a book. Mhm.
Yay. Thank
Mhm.
you. Amazing.
Mhm.
All right. Wow. Well, you just made my week.
Yay! Mhm.